Rena, the I was thinking about holiday season, family, and orientation, and just 10 seconds ago, I was looking at myself on Zoom at the Atlas Shrugged poster and I remember an anecdote from Ayn Rand, a philosopher. I don't know if I get it exactly right, but she said, I'm exaggerating and not it's not accurate, but don't talk to your parents about my ideas. Don't try to persuade your parents of philosophical ideas because they will always look at you like an infant. You will always, no matter how old you are, you will always be an infant to your parents. So it's not, I don't advise trying to discuss philosophy with your parents. Okay. And I hope I got that anecdote 80% right. I'll learn from backlash if I got it wrong, but it just occurred to me. I didn't pre-plan it. It was just, oh, so she gave that advice, right? And why did that come up? Who knows?
Yeah.
Free association, but holiday season, family, and orientation. So orientation, just to give a quick summary for those who are new to these ideas, organic intelligence. Orientation in organic intelligence is everything. That might be an exaggeration, but there's a catchphrase, orientation is everything. And it refers to being in the here and now, being specifically being connected to your immediate environment through the five senses. You see the sky, you hear the birds, etc. And what makes orientation importantly different from neighboring ideas of being in the present, being in the here and now, being mindful, two distinguishing important features. One is it's effortless. So orientation, strictly speaking, is automatic. The sky connects to my vision and to me. I resonate to it. It's salient to me. I'm not lost in an argument with a friend. A substantial amount of my attention is easily with the environment. So it's effortless. That's one. And a second important feature is that it's outward to the environment. The attention is not, I'm mindful, I'm tracking my sensations, I'm tracking my emotions, I'm tracking my thoughts, tracking, painful, pleasurable, both. It's outward. The sky, the trees, the sounds in the room, in the environment. So that's orientation. And inorganic intelligence, orientation is everything because it is our natural default optimal baseline or starting point in general. And to the degree we're oriented, automatically, effortlessly connected to the environment through the senses, I'm just going to do some quick technical stuff. To that degree, our cycles of arousal and de-arousal are optimum and reach these thresholds, which increases our capacity to deal with life automatically. I know that was very technical for newcomers, but I just wanted to do some boilerplate stuff. So what's on my mind is how orientation, discussing and thinking about orientation in terms of family and holiday season. Holiday season can kick up a lot emotionally. Time with family kicks up a lot emotionally, pleasurably and painfully. And a question in my mind was, what does it mean to be oriented in more nuanced detail? And I feel like I'm talking too much, but I'll quickly get to something. I was at, I was at, I've had a lot of family events, extended family meals, and I found myself returning to old patterns. One example is the elders always order more food that they can eat, and then they dump the food they can't eat onto the younger people like me because they think it's the height of immorality to waste food. So I, the elder, I'll just eat whatever I'm comfortable with. Okay, and then Bach, here you eat the rest. And then I took in a lot of sugar and gluten, which I'm intolerant to. Unfortunately, organic intelligence does not increase capacity to tolerate gluten, though maybe you have something to say there. So, but I didn't feel disoriented. I felt so. What exactly is orientation? Even though I just described it, but I'm in the family, zone. I'm having meals with family, but I feel like I'm in. I've reverted to old patterns, and somehow the Ayn Rand anecdote of your parents will always look at you like an infant, and they were definitely just the family dynamic, right? It's very different. You just kind of assume these roles, automatically. So that's my starting. I'll stop there. Just
Yeah.
you know.
And really we can, two thoughts. There's one,
Yeah.
when it comes to family, that can be true coming to the end of the year and what happens in the end of the year around holiday kind of things, or any other time of the year, right? Like when it comes to family, very often we do exactly what you said. There are conditioned ways of being that lends itself towards we cross the threshold of our family home, or something that is associatively close to that, right? And right away we go back into these states of being, and I would dare say that your experience there is not just you and your family, that these are extended patterns within the culture that, elders buy, get more food, and then, somehow it's good to put that on the younger people. Of course, they don't have as much chance to get food, right? So there's something too about the
Mm.
elders taking care of the youngins, and there's so many layers of things. And yeah, when you've got centuries of ancestral patterns, it's, let alone the family pattern, it's not always easy to do something different than, even if your system has been changing, and the process of orienting and paying attention to pleasure, and your thresholds are growing, you know it often is just because of the associative network. Everything that happens, we have a tendency to revert back.
Mm.
And yet, I have a second thought, and yet, in relation to this, my guess is simply having the awareness of the pattern and then being able to respond in some way that may have been appropriate to the moment might have been easier. In other words, there's a way of going into the patterns and just doing the patterns, because that's what we do. And then there's an awareness of the pattern. So at some point, we're kind of stepping outside of the pattern and watching this unfold. And that is, I would say, an advanced state of moving towards increasing thresholds, because now you're not just being the experience, you're actually able to witness the experience.
Yeah. Are you able to, thank you, repeat the 2 points, the essentialized? Are you able to do,
Around orientation,
yeah,
or
you said you had 2 points. You made, yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah.
well, the second point I was going to say was more around. So the first point was about your experience with family, and that can be holidays or not holidays. And within that, we
Oh,
were just talking
okay.
about the elements of how that might be different, even if there's still conditioning.
And even
This,
not a holiday,
and even
seems,
it's not a holiday,
yeah, yeah,
right?
okay, okay,
Sure.
okay, okay.
The second thing I was thinking is how, yes, this time of year brings up a lot of awarenesses of one's experiences. Sometimes that is with family, but sometimes that's without family. So there are people who, various circumstances, don't have the, say, Hallmark family, Hallmark being Hallmark movies, right?
Mm.
And they may not have that kind of experience, and so that brings up things. And then part of that can also be, well, the holiday time, well, holidays for whom? Right? That not all cultures and not all worldviews and religions share the same holidays. And so that too can bring up kinds of sensations, feelings, thoughts that can be disconcerting. Especially in a, say, more pluralistic culture where there's a lot of different cultures that are connected. So I think there's the simple thing of family, holiday, and orientation is actually far more bigger. And I kind of just wanted to name that,
Yeah.
for people who have all kinds of differing experiences.
Thank you. I- The question in my mind right now is what the hell is orientation? And I'm gonna explain. And I know I've put like a million videos on it, but I've written on it, but um, orientation, when it's taught in organic intelligence, it's often taught as you are simply and neutrally connected to the environment through the senses. So for that technique for people with a lot of anxiety, okay, just find five things you can see, four things you can touch, or whatever that thing is, the 5 4 3 2 1, like, okay. And then okay, that's just an orange. That is a stapler. That is that is my phone. And so you're just really getting back into this bare neutral, what are the objects in the room, and you're trying to sink into them. You're trying to connect your biology to them, and that's this base orientation. And at the same time, in organic intelligence, we speak of being oriented in the sense of your thoughts and your emotions and your sensations being congruent or appropriate or apt to what is going on. And my question is around that, those two things. And so if you are emotionally in pain during holiday season, perhaps because your family situation is not great, or you wish you had a family and you don't, could that be oriented in some way? Or if you're with family and you're having a good time and you're living in the past at the same time, there's old patternings. You're just like you're kind of reverting. I don't know if that's the right term, but to old ways. Could that still be oriented? And so I'm wondering about this. My question, my overly dramatically, what the hell's orientation? It's trying to understand or trying to get more nuanced into. There's this baseline of orientation, which is, are you connected? At the same time, if I'm at a family dinner, it's not like I just see the individual family members and then see the bowls and the soup and the cups and the noodles, and I just have this bare, neutral, detached. I see the things around me. There's a that's my mom, that's my uncle, that's my aunt. Oh, and the last time we fought about this, and oh, I remember she bought me chocolate when I was younger. And so there's all this stuff happening. So what the hell's orientation? Rena? One, sorry.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
because your question is um well, one, bringing in, you just brought in the fact that humans that are in our environment, they're also outside of us. And so if we're tuning to them and we're noticing their experience and what's happened to them, and so a lot of that is going to happen on the, below conscious awareness. So you're going to notice facial patterns, and you'll notice looks in the eyes, and you'll notice posture, all those things which are communicating. And so you're paying attention, and you're taking that information in. The aspect of your brain's activity that notices what's happening, that's all coming in. And that's part of orientation. So orientation is noticing whatever's happening in the external environment. And we're unable to have that purely in the sense of it's impossible not to have the past experiences, remembering your aunt brought you chocolate, remembering an argument that you had with, somebody, your cousin. Like, it's not possible to not have those part of your awareness as well. And I think in organic intelligence, we talk about brain networks or associative networks, that there's a way in which the brain cells, dendrites, are connecting, creating pathways of activity, and those pathways of activity are connected to things that have happened in the past. And so I don't believe it's possible to have an experience at any given point that doesn't include both taking in what's happening in the environment and the fact that various things have happened in the past, however many years we have been alive, and that those things are happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
Now, there's a
So,
difference though, right? So when you use the phrase, I'm in an oriented state, right? That there's a certain level of neutrality that is present because things just are, including your aunt's behavior. You're not likely to change that. Your parents' behaviors and how they do things. It's very unlikely that we're going to change that. And so it is possible, though, that well, let me back up. Part of being oriented or having orientation is being able to approach the present moment as a present moment. Now, is it possible to separate that entirely from things that have happened in the past? I'm not convinced that it is. I know there's people who are experimenting with being able to take out memories, right, with certain chemicals or processing the brains. I'm not even sure that's a good idea, but people are experimenting with that. Like, what if we could wipe out certain traumatic memories? Nonetheless, we've all got these things that are coming to us, and so the difference is the more we are oriented, the more we are in a space where most of what's around us is neutral, the easier it will be to respond to the present moment. Your aunt says something, your dad behaves in a certain way. It'll be easier to be able to respond to that from a more neutral place and much more from a spontaneous place. So in other words, if somebody says something that's just really off color, rude, inappropriate, the right spontaneous action might be to say something back, right? And be able to like, no, you don't talk to me that way. Or the right moment might be to make a joke about it and therefore diffuse tension. Or the right thing to do in the moment would be like, you know what, I'm just going to walk away from this situation and go somewhere else, right? There's all kinds of possible actions. No actions are right or wrong necessarily, but when one is in an oriented place where there's a greater sense of ease with what is, the easier it will be to respond accurately to the moment rather than having all the condition color our views about what to do or what not to do.
there was an example that came to mind of when I spontaneously did something that I think served me. I hesitate to talk about my family member. Well, I'll just be kind of abstract. A family member, say, and if you're watching, it's not you, uh, started asking me about what I do in my career, and I felt uncomfortable. And I answered one or two questions very tersely, and then the family member wanted to continue, and I just spontaneously said, "I actually don't want to tell you more about what I do. I don't want to talk about what I do." And the family member immediately backed off and said, "Oh, okay, sorry, I understand." So that worked, and I didn't pre-plan that. It was just I felt a little bit was it a fight, flight, freeze kind of place I was in? I don't think so, but it was just this spontaneous. It came out and it served me that I just said that, as opposed to just continuing to answer questions and being uncomfortable. And I remember another example. I'm curious what you think about where a lot of different family events, a different meal, and a family member was asking me what I do, and I answered tersely again. And then that family member kept wanting more. And then two other family members intervened and just were able to just change the direction of the conversation. And I think I know they were trying to help me out, uh, which I appreciated. And I think so that would that be an example of just we somehow make it we have it within our biology to just to quickly make things work or calibrate with each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And and again, yeah, I said there aren't right and wrongs necessarily because every individual moment is a unique moment. and it involves unique interactions with other unique people and their own biology and how it's organized or not organized. And sometimes interactions with certain people, you can go, whatever I say here is actually going to be disorganizing, possibly for myself, possibly for that other person, but it's not going to serve an organizing effect, right? It's also possible that in another moment, another family member can somehow start asking you about what you do. And there's a sense of, oh, like I'm just having a conversation. These are the things I do. And they go, wow, that's really cool. I've been thinking about the same thing. What do you think about this? And all of a sudden you are deep in a conversation. There'd be something where your biology understood that this person would be able to have an open conversation without judgment, right? That they would be joining you, participating with you, and being attuned to you. That then you just open up to that possibility, right?
Yeah.
And same kind of question, same possible conversation topic. And one time it feels like, oh, I need to put up some kind of a boundary or just say no. And then other times it feels like, oh yeah, happy to engage with you. And I would say the more oriented your system is on a regular basis, the more likely you will be able to receive accurate cues from the space of the interaction from the other person, that those cues would match what reality, and then you would be responding accordingly.
Yes. And I'm thinking if if some I'm going to stop talking about myself. It's a little bit uncomfortable. So if a person is uncomfortable in some social situation, that according to organic intelligence, the discomfort is a sign that orientation is not online, right? Because orientation is a neutral, very so if there's some discomfort, um, that may indicate not orientation is not very stabilized. I'm trying to catch up with where my mind is going with this. This may be a bit of a jump, but some guy is with his family. He's closeted. He's gay. He hasn't come out to his family. Maybe they know, maybe they don't know. Maybe some members know, some don't. And he's on edge and nervous. What if someone asks me if I have a girlfriend? And in in one possible variation, orientation is so strong, so stable. He's oriented that he could just say, "Oh no, I'm gay," and then even if they have an aversive reaction, the orientation is so stable he's fine with it, and he just keeps eating his spaghetti. In another variation, orientation is you don't have that kind of super duper orientation. You're a little bit nervous. Someone starts asking about your personal life, and you say, "I'm kind of private. I don't want to go there," and they back off. But that could be oriented or very adaptive in a situation where you don't have that hyper invincible orientation where you could just say who you are and then whatever the reaction is doesn't matter. So I think I'm trying to explore orientation can be stable in very different degrees, and different topics may disorient, may trigger discomfort. So we can talk about. I'm not sure. I'm kind of petering out. My mind is.
Yeah, can I jump
Yeah,
in a little
yeah.
bit? Because so there's a couple things. Like, so there's one, you're talking about the state of the individual, like in this case, a young gay man who hasn't shared with a lot of people and therefore feels discomfort going into the situation, right? That would be a good sign of, yeah, that's probably not something I'm ready to talk about because I'm not ready for the feedback, whichever way it comes. So that level of discomfort, regardless of what it has to do with orientation, organic intelligence, we say, hey, that's over threshold, and be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, and find a way to avoid those kind of conversations till you're ready for that, till it feels okay to do that. But there could also be one is not uncomfortable. We have no problem sharing. However, recognizing who the audience is to share that with the audience at a particular time. It may not be the right time. It might not be this is the audience for whoever they are. Their, whatever feedback you're going to get. It's just not the right thing to do at that moment, right? And
Yeah.
so a person can say, I'm really oriented. I'm not uncomfortable saying, what my orientation is. And I'm perfectly okay not speaking about it in the company of these people on this event. Right. And so that would be a judicious assessment of the people that would be being oriented to what's happening in the environment and making decisions according to that.
Yeah, nice. So orientation, oh, as we come upon our close for today and we'll be seeing each other next week as well. Um, Orientation is everything. That's a catchphrase, an important motto in organic intelligence. The more we can, the more our biology effortlessly connects to the external environment, which is almost never immediately life-threatening, and therefore we would feel safe and neutral and comfortable. To the degree we have that orientation online, we'll be comfortable. If something happens that causes discomfort, we're more likely to return to comfort more quickly, and that discomfort is less likely to be so intense. And in social situations, we can really make in the moment just decisions that you can't calculate about when to talk, when not, what to say. And you may not even know why am I doing this to avoid my own discomfort? Am I doing this to prevent someone else from being uncomfortable? Those we have to make these decisions very quickly, right? And so orientation increases the chances that we're serving ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If I sense that some topic may trigger me, and if I'm currently oriented, I'll more likely be able to say something that where I could, so as to avoid losing orientation. Yeah.
Right. Right. And avoid entering into a high intensity sympathetic arousal, like a fight response, where suddenly a fight is escalating between you and the other person you're talking with, or
Yeah.
of the feeling of I have to leave. Like, so a flight response, sometimes that's very appropriate. So in situations you might decide, hey, this is too much for me. I'm going to take a break, or I'm just going to leave. Right. And that can be appropriate in terms of preserving your own well-being at the place where your biology currently is. And it doesn't help us ever, and doesn't usually help others around us, but definitely doesn't help us the more we get into the fight response when that's not necessarily the best response of the moment. And so the more oriented we are, the more we're going to stay in, some people call it safe and social. If you want that, where we can recognize, in spite of the fact that I don't like what was said, I'm still intrinsically safe, and I can still stay in a social way. I can still stay in connection in some way. And I'm not I don't have to switch over into the fight flight kind of space, or the freezy, collapsy, I can't say
Mm.
anything type place. That may happen, and we're not going to judge that to be wrong, but the more oriented we are, the less likely that is going to be what happens. It's not as likely to be in a really high sympathetic charged, or a dorsal vagal, if we're going to use that term, just kind of a freezy collapse state.
Thank you.
Yeah,
No
it's a
closing
big
remark.
topic.
Yeah, I mean, no closing remark comes to mind. It was just a holiday season, family, and orientation.
Yeah, I don't know what we want to do next week, but we'll meet again next week. But I think we could probably extend this conversation. We
Yeah,
just
certainly. I
barely
mean,
scratched the surface on this.
I that's actually how I felt about all our prior conversations. Yeah, but yeah. So I definitely, yeah.
Yeah, let's maybe that might we'll see what happens. We
Okay, we'll
might
see.
decide
Yeah.
differently when next week comes. But yeah, let's see about this.
Okay. Thank you as usual, Rena, and I'll see you next week.